You are asleep, completely still. No weapon in your hand, no wall around you, nothing but firelight and the sound of your own breathing. Somewhere in the dark, a pair of eyes is watching you. They belong to a wolf. It is close enough to smell you, close enough to kill you, and it does not move. For most of human history, this was not a nightmare. This was every single night. Your ancestors slept in the open, on grass, on dirt, on animal hide, surrounded by predators that could outrun them, outsmell them, and outfight them in almost every measurable way. And yet, somewhere in that darkness, something strange started happening. The predators stopped attacking. Some of them stayed, and eventually, some of them started sleeping next to you. How does that happen? What does a wolf actually think, watching a defenseless human sleep by a fire? To understand that, you have to go back further than dogs, further than farms, further than almost anything you'd call civilization. Around 40,000 years ago, gray wolves were the most successful land predator on the planet. They hunted in coordinated packs, communicated through body language and howls, and controlled territory across nearly the entire northern hemisphere. Humans, by comparison, were slow, weak-clawed, and nearly hairless. No claws sharp enough to matter, no speed to outrun anything. On paper, you should have lost every single encounter. But wolves are not just strong, they are watchers. And that habit of watching may be the exact thing that changed everything. Biologist Raymond Coppinger studied this question for decades, and his research pointed to something surprising. He proposed that wolves were not tamed by humans at all, at least not at first. They tamed themselves. Here's what that means. Every time your ancestors killed a large animal, they couldn't eat all of it. Bones, organs, scraps, leftover meat, all of it got dumped near the campsite. For a wolf, that's not danger. That's a buffet that requires zero hunting. And hunting is expensive. It burns energy. It risks injury. It sometimes ends in death. So, which wolf do you think had the advantage? The bold one who charged in and got speared? Or the cautious one who hung back at the edge of the firelight, just close enough to grab the leftovers once the humans walked away? Coppinger's theory says the calmer, less reactive wolves won that game, generation after generation. Not because they were friendlier, because they were more efficient. Fear costs energy. Boldness gets you killed. Indifference gets you fed. Think about what that meant across hundreds of generations of wolves. Every bold, aggressive animal that rushed a human campsite risked a spear through the ribs. Every cautious one that simply waited nearby lived long enough to pass on its genes. You weren't selecting for friendliness. You were accidentally selecting for patience. And patience, it turns out, is the first ingredient of trust. This is where it gets interesting, because indifference eventually became tolerance, and tolerance eventually became something closer to partnership. Cognitive researcher Brian Hare has spent years studying how dogs think, and, by extension, how their wolf ancestors' minds were shaped. Hare found that dogs, unlike almost any other animal on Earth, are exceptionally good at reading human gestures. Point at something, and a dog will look where you're pointing. A chimpanzee, one of our closest relatives, usually won't. Even a hand-raised wolf pup struggles with this task compared to a dog. That's not a small thing. That means somewhere in the domestication process, something rewired in the animal's brain that let it understand human intention. Not human words, intention. What you want, what you mean. A wild animal reading your body the way you'd read a friend's face. So picture it, a wolf lingering at the edge of a Paleolithic campsite. It is not thinking in language the way you do, but it is reading you, your posture, your movement, whether you reach for a spear or reach for food, whether you turn toward it or away. Every night you slept near that fire, defenseless, you were being studied by an animal whose entire evolutionary success depended on reading exactly how dangerous or how safe you were. Now, here's the archaeological proof that this wasn't just theory. At Goyet Cave in Belgium, researchers uncovered the skull of a canid dating back roughly 36,000 years, with proportions unlike a wild wolf. Shorter snout, wider skull. Traits associated with early domestication. That's tens of thousands of years before farming existed, before villages, before anything you'd call settled life. Whatever relationship was forming, it started long before humans had a word for pet. And at Chauvet Cave in France, a set of footprints tells an even stranger story. A child, roughly 10 years old, walked through the cave around 26,000 years ago, and alongside those small human footprints are the paw prints of a large canid walking the exact same path. Not hunting it, not fleeing it, walking beside it. Let's reconstruct that scene. A child, alone in near total darkness, torch in hand, deep inside a cave most adults wouldn't enter without good reason. The air is cold. The only light comes from a small flame that could go out at any moment. And walking next to that child, matching its pace step for step, is an animal that should have been a predator. Not attacking, not stalking, accompanying. Imagine what that would have taken. For the child to walk calmly beside a large wild canid in total darkness, the animal's presence had to feel safer than being alone. And for the animal to match a child's pace, instead of circling or fleeing, something in its behavior had already shifted away from pure wild instinct. That single trail of footprints is one of the earliest physical hints we have that the relationship between humans and wolves had already crossed some invisible line. It wasn't just tolerance anymore. It was partnership. Here's the counterintuitive twist most people get backwards. You probably assume humans domesticated wolves the way you'd tame a wild horse. Capture it, cage it, force obedience. But paleoanthropologist Pat Shipman has argued something almost the opposite. She suggests that this early alliance between humans and wolf-like canids may have given your ancestors a decisive edge over another group of humans entirely, Neanderthals. Neanderthals were stronger, more cold-adapted, and had lived in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years longer than modern humans had. They knew the land, they knew the seasons. By almost every physical measure, they were better built for survival in Ice Age Europe than you were. But they show almost no evidence of this kind of animal partnership. Modern humans, according to Shipman's hypothesis, may have used early tamed canids as hunting partners, trackers, and camp sentries, letting them sniff out prey, track wounded animals for miles, and detect approaching danger long before human senses ever could. A wolf's nose can pick up a scent trail a human wouldn't notice if they stepped directly on it. A wolf's ears can hear movement from a distance no human could match. If that's true, then the wolf sleeping at the edge of your ancestors' fire wasn't just tolerated company. It may have been one of the deciding factors in which human species survived the Ice Age, and which one quietly disappeared. So, what was the wolf actually thinking watching you sleep? Probably not affection, not in the way you'd recognize it. More likely, a calculation running quietly underneath instinct. This creature is not attacking me. This creature sometimes feeds me. This creature makes noise when other predators approach. Safety, food. Warning system. To a wolf's mind, shaped by 100,000 years of survival math, that combination was worth staying close to, even if staying close meant lying a few feet from a sleeping, defenseless human. And your ancestors were running the same calculation in reverse. A wolf at the edge of the firelight meant an early warning system while you slept. Keener ears than yours, a sharper nose than yours. A set of senses tuned to exactly the threats that could kill you in the dark. Threats you would never see coming on your own. Neither species fully understood the other. Neither one had language to explain the arrangement. But both species understood, on some level, that something was being gained. Here's the mirror. You've probably never slept next to an open fire with a wild predator 6 feet away. But if you've ever owned a dog, you've felt an echo of this exact ancient exchange. The way it lifts its head at a sound you didn't hear. The way it positions itself between you and a stranger without being told to. The way it simply lies down beside you, at the foot of your bed, and stays there all night. That behavior is not new. It is not cute in the shallow sense you usually give it credit for. It is the direct descendant of a survival contract written around campfires tens of thousands of years before anyone thought to call it a pet. Every time a dog rests its head near your feet while you sleep, some faint trace of that Ice Age calculation is still running underneath the fur and the wagging tail, watching, weighing, staying close, because, for one wolf, a very long time ago, staying close turned out to be the smartest move it ever made. It's worth sitting with how strange that really is. Of every large predator on the planet capable of killing you in seconds, exactly one chose, over tens of thousands of years, to move closer instead of further away. Not because it was forced to, because the math worked out in its favor, because a defenseless, sleeping human by a fire was, against every instinct a wild animal carries, worth the risk of staying near. So the next time you fall asleep completely defenseless, with something warm and watchful lying near your feet, remember, this wasn't always comfort. It used to be a wolf, watching you in the dark, deciding you were worth the risk.